The pleasure versus discomfort meter. This is an imaginary meter that I kind of conceptualized that has had a huge impact on my life once I realized and appreciated that it exists, in theory at least. So, what is it? I believe that each of us has this internal pleasure versus discomfort meter that is constantly being monitored by our minds, more specifically, our subconscious minds. What I think, the way in which I think it works, is that as we're going through our daily lives, hour to hour, minute to minute, second to second, we have this meter, and it's gauged towards either pleasure or discomfort. And the goal of our minds and ourselves in many ways is to manage that meter and to optimize it as best we can towards pleasure in the long term, right? So at a net level, when you look across your life, you want that meter to be geared more towards pleasure. Now, it moves throughout the day, right? And there'll be times in the day in which it's shifted really towards discomfort, and days or times where it's shifted all the way towards pleasure. And you want to manage that. Now, as I said, our subconscious, I believe, has the prime job of managing that on a day by day, minute by minute basis. And I believe it's well intentioned, our subconscious, in doing that. It's a little short sighted. It's a little bit simple minded almost in how it does it, but it's laser focused on what it does. What it's trying to do is second to second, minute to minute, it wants pleasure at all times. So it's trying to make sure that meter is pushed towards pleasure. So this manifests out in ways you would imagine, where as you're going about your day and you're thinking about, hey, I should go for a jog, or I should, go do something, go read a book. Your subconscious starts to read that and says, well, going for a jog, right? That's going to be a lot of work, and it's hot out, and your ankle's bothering you a little bit, and that's discomfort. That's going to push the meter the other way. Bad idea. Like, go sit on the couch, get a bag of chips, watch Netflix. That'll move your meter all the way to pleasure. And it will, but in the short term, right? So that's something we have to be careful for with this meter. The other thing to think about is that it's not just one dimensional. It's not just that moment that it's identifying. You have to take in the context and your environment and things that are happening throughout your life. So maybe you have a shit day at work, right? Your boss gives you a hard time. You got so much work to do. You find out you're going to have to work over the weekend. Well, now your meter is shifted towards discomfort. There's a tolerance level, right? There's a threshold in which your mind will say, hey, I can't take any more discomfort. I'm too far over. So now you get home and you walk in the door and your son's yelling and screaming and dancing and singing, not really doing anything wrong, just having fun. But that noise, right? That overwhelming, kind of overwhelming your senses is discomfort. And you're already maxed out on your meter. And now you lose your shit. And maybe you yell at your son, and you have a bad temper, and, you say something, whatever. That's that meter, right? Your subconscious is trying to manage it, and it's saying, hey, I can't take any more discomfort, so you have to stop yelling right now. So that's also something you need to consider. Now, ideally, you want to manage this meter in the long term, for the long term. So although our subconscious has the job of doing this, and again, it's laser focused and it means well, it's trying to bring us pleasure, you need to step in with your conscious mind. Your conscious mind needs to take the role of managing this meter. The first step is just being aware of it and having clarity of it, right? But the ability to make decisions that you say, hey, I might need to take on a little bit of discomfort, functional discomfort, I would call it, right? So that in the long run, I get more pleasure. Really make the decisions that I know are going to bring me the things that are pleasurable in the long run. And when I say pleasure, I don't mean just like hedonistic pleasure, right? Of just, gluttony or whatever it might be. I mean the things that actually matter to you. And that's the other key piece of this, right? As you think about this meter, you have to understand, what are the drivers? What are the things that really drive pleasure for me in the long run, right? Really meaningful pleasure. And what are the things that drive discomfort? And that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But you have to understand those drivers, the things you value that are really going to give you that rich, potent pleasure that you're looking for, right? It might be relationships and family. It might be your children. It might be your job and fulfillment of that. It might be health and taking care of yourself or working out. Whatever it is, you have to figure out. But the point is, beware this meter exists, right? Your mind is constantly monitoring this. Beware that your subconscious wants to do the job, but it shouldn't, because it's too short-sighted and it's not suited for it. And C, beware of where you are in that meter on a day-by-day basis or throughout the day, because if you're at that point where you feel like you might lose it, it's probably because you're too high on discomfort. you have no more tolerance for it and you need to bring it back in some way. So you might need to go do some activity that gives you a little bit of pleasure, reduces some of that discomfort so you can get back into balance so that your subconscious just doesn't do it for you and snap out in some situation. So the pleasure versus discomfort meter, something I've found really useful and something that I think is really interesting to think about.